Good morning, everybody. It's really an honor to be here with you. I came from North Carolina in the United States to spend some time with you guys, and I really love being able to talk about what I do for a living. There's very few people that get to do what I do full time and kind of make a living at it, and sort of anyway. People in wildlife don't make a great living, but it is very, very satisfying. I love to share what we do. I'm just going to give you a little overview of kind of what we do at the Carolina Raptor Center, and definitely if you have any questions, please just raise your hand and we'll talk about it. I'm going to kind of angle this way. The Raptor Center in North Carolina, we're one of the largest in the United States. We have rehab centers all over the country. It's a very big place with 50 states, and there's hundreds of rehab centers, but there's only about 5 big raptor centers like the Carolina Raptor Center. We've been there for a long, long time, about 35 years, and we see close to or just over 1,000 birds of prey every year, and that's a huge, huge number. These are all wild birds that have been injured that we try to rehab, and our goal is always to release them back to the wild. That is 100% our goal. We just admitted 22460. That's all birds of prey in our history. And actually, since I left, we've admitted about 30 or 40 more since that, so it's a very busy time of year for us as well. We also have a collection of close to 90 permanent residents, and we do a lot of education programs. We see a lot of school kids. They come in for programs, thousands of people a year. So although rehab is a big part of what we do, education's huge, because you can fix a bird and send them back out, but unless you can educate the population to not injure them in the first place, you're not really going to get very far. So although I focus on the rehab side, the medicine and surgery, in reality, the education part is probably a lot more important, although I wouldn't admit that outside this room. We have about 85 birds of prey, and a lot of them came through our rehab center as injured and were not releasable, and we kept them as a permanent resident. We have staff of maybe 15 to 20 people, but only 4 are in the rehab center, including myself. So there's 4 people that do the work of 1,000 birds every year. It's a very busy place, but I feel like I'm pretty proud of my team. We're very efficient and we get a lot done with very little. We do have a huge team of volunteers that do everything from cleaning and food prep and rescue and transport of injured animals, office work, you name it, construction, maintenance. They do a lot of stuff for us. So a place like the Raptor Center could not really survive without all these volunteers. So our center is really great. I feel very lucky. When I started out in rehab, I worked with these little rehab centers that would work in their living room or their kitchen, and I would do surgery on the dining room table with a chandelier light above. And things have changed a lot since then. We actually have a facility with a full surgical suite, digital radiography, we can do full blood work in-house. We have, one of the things I love about the Raptor Center is all these different enclosures, from these little 1 by 1 meter cubicles, all the way up to these 30 or 40 meter flight cages. Here's an example of a juvenile bald eagle baby in one of our large 35 meter flight cages. So you really need a lot of flight cage space to do this job properly. We're constantly building new ones. When I started, we had about half of those 12 years ago, and now we have about 80 different enclosures outside. And I think that's great to be able to get them outside, away from fluorescent lights, fresh air, sunshine. It really, really helps. We also do a lot of teaching of vet students, and I know we have some vet students in the audience right now, and we have a program called Raptor Vet. We get students, 3rd or 4th year vet students from all over the world. They spend 2 weeks with us. Very, very intensive program, hands-on. They get to learn and do a lot. In fact, last week we had 2 students from Taiwan, and we get them from all over the world. So it's great to be able to share the knowledge that we have. And actually, next year we're building a whole new facility, brand new building, and we're going to have a CT scanner and all kinds of great, great new equipment. So I'm really looking forward to that. So here's some pictures. These are some of our big flight cages. This is about 35 meters, maybe 5 meters, 6 meters tall. Here's an example of inside. And this is what we call a hack tower. So our bald eagle babies, they need to learn to hunt on their own. We can live prey test owls and hawks with live prey like rats and mice and things like that. But a bald eagle hunts fish out in a big river or lake, and there's no way for us to do that in captivity. So they go in what's called a half tower. And so when they're young, we put them in there with the doors closed, and as they start to get older and want to start flying and flexing their wings, we'll open these doors, and then they come and go for 3 or 4 weeks until they're used to hunting on their own, and we feed them every day, and they come back and eat out of the half tower, and eventually they just disappear and they don't come back. It's a really great way to do it, and we actually have a bald eagle baby in the hospital right now, and he's probably going to end up in the half tower pretty soon. Our admissions have really grown over the years. Back when we started, we had, about 2 or 3 a year. And now you can see we had a really big year in 2012 or 13, and we're at about 800 or 900 birds every year. And that, it's a very seasonal thing. I'll show you a graph in a minute where right now, in the middle of the summer, we have a huge spike, babies, orphans, that sort of thing. But it's a pretty busy practice year-round. The cause of admission is really kind of sad. When you look at this chart, pretty much all of this is due to human interaction, negative interaction, that is. And unfortunately, I hate to mention this one right here, gunshot. Unfortunately, I'm very embarrassed about what happens in my country with gunshot. These birds are protected by many state and federal laws, and yet people shoot them all the time. We get gunshot literally probably half a dozen every week, and it's really sad. Hit by car, HBC, hit by car, that's an accident. We see a lot of that, but gunshot is not. That's an intentional act, and it really disturbs me. And it's one of the reasons why I love to do what I do, because I feel like trying to give back. Mankind, humanity has done such damage and continues to do so much damage. I feel like everybody in this room that does wildlife rehab, I really want to thank you for what you do, because I think it's so important. When you look at this chart, though, unknown, it's a big area, but really a lot of those are hit by car, and we just don't know it for sure. So when you look at this chart, pretty much 90% of it is human interaction, and it's really sad. Fell from nest. That oftentimes means that their tree was cut down. So there's so much development back home. Beautiful, pristine forests are being leveled for homes and that sort of thing, and we end up with a lot of habitat destruction. It's really sad. I like to not dwell on that and just move on to how we fix them. And so we deal with about 12 species. The barred owl, this is one of our most common. In fact, about almost a quarter. You guys, is there a bird like a barred owl here? Does anybody, do you have a similar species? Funny owls like that? This is about maybe 600 to 900 grams. Is that about the same range? Yeah, maybe. They're a really great species. They're very resilient. They live in all kinds of habitat. They can eat almost anything. They do really well. And they can heal from almost any injury. And I always say that if it's a barred owl, give them a chance, because they will heal themselves. They're really incredible animals. My favorite, though, is the red-tailed hawk. And I know you guys have something similar to that. It's Buteo jamacensis, and I believe you have Buteo that lives here. Beautiful bird, powerful, sleek. I just love them. And you can see that between the barred owl and a red-shouldered hawk, which is a smaller version of the red-tail, they take up big percentage, 2/3 of the species that we see. And then there's a smattering of about a dozen other species, but those are the big ones. And so hit by car, why does that happen? We do a lot of education with kids, adults, and it's very simple. You're driving down the road, you toss an apple core out the window, right? It's biodegradable, you don't think it's going to cause any damage. But then trash on the side of the road attracts rodents, and those rodents attract birds of prey, and they get hit by car. So this may seem like not a big deal, but this is the number one cause for why we get birds of prey into our hospital, with horrible injuries. So this is one thing that you can teach. Don't throw stuff out the window, even if it's biodegradable and you think it's harmless. It isn't. It attracts rodents, which attract raptors, and they get hit. That's a really easy thing to teach, and we try to teach that to every young child that comes through our center. Gunshot. This is sad. We get things like this all the time. Poor animals. These guys. obviously this one's elbow is destroyed. There's nothing anybody's going to do for that. But we do deal with a lot of gunshot injuries, and we do have a lot of success with them. It's just sad that we have to deal with this at all. I don't know if gunshots are a problem in this country, but it certainly is a big one back home, and it's really sad. So, but that's where I have some fun though, with orthopedics and surgery. We do tons and tons of broken bones back home. You can see that the humerus fracture, that's the one that we repair the most. It's an interesting fracture. They come in every different form, and it's one of those things where just when you feel like you're getting good at something, you get a new case, and you're all right back to square one, trying to learn how to do it again. But I really enjoy orthopedics. It's a very mechanical thing, as opposed to medicine, where you're not really sure what's wrong. With a fracture, you take an X-ray, you know what's wrong, and oftentimes you know how to fix it, hopefully. So I love doing that. We also see a fair number of fractured legs, tibia tarsi and femurs. And in fact, just before I got on the airplane Friday, we had a fractured humerus that came in about an hour before I was leaving. And normally we give them about a day or two to recoup before we do surgery, but we just brought them right up to surgery, got them on the table, and got them repaired. And then I went right to the airport. So you never know what a typical day is going to bring. So orthopedics is something that I'm really proud of because I feel like over the years I've progressed in my skill. And when I look at a fracture like this, 10 years ago I would have euthanized that bird. It wouldn't have been something I would try to repair. But now we repair horrible fractures like this all the time, and we release these birds all the time. So it's really great to strive to get better. Try to repair something that you don't think you can, because that's the only way you get better. And if I hadn't, tried these 10 years ago, I never would have gotten to the point where I can do them now. Here's another example. Very, very distal. This is a Bardal. Very, very distal fracture. That would have been really, really difficult, and now we routinely repair these. And here's an example of what we do. It's an alternate approach that isn't written up in a lot of books, but it's something that you can do and something you can learn. And this bird was released as well. So I look at this horribly injured animal like that. 25 minutes of surgery can save their life, can turn their life around. And that's one of the parts of my job that I really, really enjoy. Here he is, flying. That was this bird. This is 4 weeks later. He still has his implants in, and he's able to fly. It's pretty incredible when you think about that. If you or I had a similar fracture, we'd probably be in physical therapy for 6 months or 8 months, and this guy was released at 12 weeks post-surgery. Pretty amazing. You can see that he's still a little bit asymmetric, but he's in a flight cage now, and we actually have this flight cage with these strips. Those are vision strips, so they have to maneuver around them. We can check their eyes, how good their eyes are by how they can maneuver, and hopefully they avoid those strips. They can't hurt themselves if they hit them, but it's a nice way to test them. Another fracture that I really enjoy, the tarsometatarsus. That's the lower bone in the leg. And you can see that this guy, this is the day after surgery, and he's already bearing really decent amount of weight on that leg. I love orthopedics. To me, it's just a very neat thing to work on. Any orthopedic surgeons out there? Anybody? Broken bones? Yeah? Cool. Awesome. It's fun, isn't it? And so it's not all orthopedics. We deal with a lot of other types of things. And it's funny, when I look at this picture, I can tell it's old because my hair is dark and I don't have a bald spot. But that's probably 10 years ago. But we do a lot of endoscopy as well, and aspergillosis, big problem for me back home. We have a lot of birds that come in with this. Is asper something you guys deal with here in Hungary? Yeah, maybe? Yeah. So endoscopy obviously is a great way to look at it, or to diagnose it. These are some really unhappy air sacs. So we deal with a lot of asper, and oftentimes we actually will just start treating even if we don't see a whole lot on endoscopy. And oftentimes the treatment will work, and we kind of know that we're right if it actually responds. So one of the things that I wanted to mention, I've been trying to spread the word about pesticide toxicosis. And I presented some data at multiple conferences over the last few years because I really want people to know about this. We have seen a really horrible uptick in neurologic cases. And and they turned out to be from organochlorines. And I'm not exactly sure when you guys outlawed them here in the continent, but they've been outlawed for 30 or 40 years back home. And we are getting birds that are lethally intoxicated, sometimes with 150 times the lethal dose in their brain back home. And so we're trying to figure out where this is coming from, because it's a really scary problem and it involves people all over the world. And I know these chemicals are outlawed here in Europe, but they're still probably popping up the way we have it. And, we used to think, when you diagnose a problem, you've got these categories like trauma, infectious, neoplasia, toxin, that type of thing. And we always kind of mention toxin, but we never really look for it. Number one, because it's expensive, but also because oftentimes the testing is post-mortem. Like, you can't test a brain without the bird being dead, so we oftentimes didn't test very often, but now that we are doing the testing, we're finding out that the toxin piece is actually huge. So if you get neurologic cases, avian cases, definitely don't rule toxins out, because I guarantee you you're going to be seeing it, and it's really, really sad. And then, of course, there's some fun stuff. We are in the middle of baby season, and this is a little red-shouldered hawk baby. It's hard to imagine that this thing would turn into a lethal, killing, carnivorous machine, but it does. These are two little barn owl babies. And so we are in the middle of baby season. It goes from like May or June, July, and we see a huge uptick in our cases. We used to raise them the old-fashioned way with camouflage and a puppet and tweezer feeding them. And that works. It works. It's really expensive. These babies eat 3 to 4 times what the adult would eat. And you risk the chance of mal-imprinting them, improperly imprinting them, so they're not really sure they're a barn owl or a red-shoulder. They think they're a human, and that's not good. Those birds are not releasable, so we have to be very careful with the camouflage and the puppet. And you see that here's our intakes over the year. This spike in the middle of every year is our baby spike. That's baby season. And notice it's going down. And that's intentional, because we started a very concerted effort about 3 or 4 years ago to start re-nesting a lot of these babies, taking them back to the nest, their original nest, or another nest, and popping them back in. And that seems simple to say, but it's not so easy when you consider the nest is up there. Hard to get to. That's me right there. There's the end of the ladder, and I have another 8 meters to go, or something like that. But it's fun. I love climbing. Anybody like climbing trees when you're young? Yeah. I climb a lot of trees now. I just love being up there. I don't know what it is about being in a tree, but it's just fun. The nest is right there, and I'm just hanging out, getting myself situated for another couple of climbs up. And here's the end result. It's really fun. We actually sometimes will place them back in the original nest if we can. Here's some owls that fell out through this crack, so sometimes we add on some wood to keep them from falling out. Sometimes we actually have volunteers that weave an artificial nest, and then we'll secure that up in the tree. And if I can't actually reach the original nest, we can put that in the same tree, and the parents will take care of both nests, usually. There's a little bit of a risk involved, but the benefits of getting them back in the original tree are really, really great, so we try to do that whenever we can. And this is where I'm going to build myself when I eventually grow up. I'm going to have a tree house myself, so I love being in trees. And I just love climbing anything. Any rock climbers out there? Yeah. That's anybody been to Red Rocks in the United States? Las Vegas? There's an awesome climbing spot. And so anytime I can get up in a tree is fun for me. And people always ask, well, so Dave, what's a typical day for you? And that's such a funny question, because there is no such thing as a typical day in wildlife rehab. I'm sure a lot of you guys can attest to that. So I got a call, this was about a year ago, about an osprey. This is a 65-meter cell phone tower. There was an osprey dangling up there. And again, there I am, right there. Probably 50 meters up at that point, trying to get up there. Luckily, there was a ladder, but it was pretty scary and windy up there. Unfortunately, this one didn't turn out very well. The osprey was already dead, hanging from fishing line up there, which is sad. But you never know. Every day is different. It's definitely not a desk job. So if you're thinking about getting into wildlife medicine, you think you're going to be sitting at a desk all day, it's not going to happen. But that's part of the fun. So we are, back in the United States, we need a special permit to actually put a permanent ban on our birds to release them. And luckily we have that permit. And we've been banding and releasing birds for 30 plus years. And this is really cool because people always ask me, well, why bother? Why do you bother? You don't know if they're going to survive. For instance, like those skinny birds that we all get in, emaciated cases. Why bother releasing them or rehabbing them? Because they weren't going to survive. Nature was going to take them out anyway. So why bother? And I never really had a great answer for that. I felt in my gut that I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't sure. And so we did a study recently, and this really made me feel good about what you do and what I do, because these birds really do survive. Here's that emaciation case. This is a category of injury. Emaciation cases were surviving, 62% of them were surviving past 6 weeks. And internationally, most people consider a successful release of a bird if they make it for 6 weeks. And so we were seeing 62%, which is great because in a lot of species, 75% of the babies die in the first year anyway. So the fact that 62% of ours were surviving tells me that yes, in fact, these emaciated cases can survive, and they do survive. And this is another great one, blinded one eye. So we get owls that have irreparable damage to one eye, and we remove the eye. We do an evisceration procedure where we actually leave the globe intact, but we remove the contents of the eye. And so these are one-eyed birds now. And we're always wondering, is that the right thing to do? Are they just going to starve in the wild or get hit by a car? And it turned out that they were surviving 75% of the time. So and the reason we're getting this data is these banded birds eventually come back to us. Oftentimes they're dead when they come back, and we can read the band and look them up in our database and figure out who they were and when we released them and what was wrong with them. And so we get a lot of information. We get about 25 to 30 band returns every year, and over the course of 30 years we've accumulated a lot of data. And the interesting thing is that these survival rates are really, really good when you consider that the normal death rate in some of these species can be a half or 2/3 or even higher. So I feel great about this. The orphan ones, people say, well, they were orphan, they weren't going to survive. But in fact, they do, 68%. And we have had birds that have come back to us literally 15 years later. In fact, in the United States, we just got the record for the bird that was out the longest, and it was a barred owl that we just got back a month ago. She was out for 25 years. It's a new record. And we didn't even know they survived that long in the wild. So the data that we're getting from our band returns is really, really interesting and really, really important. Are you guys able to band and collect data like that here? That's awesome, because you learn so much. And getting back to that question, well, why do you bother? Well, this is why we bother, because it really, really helps. And when you consider that we get 1,000 birds a year, we're releasing about 650 of them every year. Imagine how many rodents would be reproducing, rats and stuff, if those birds weren't there. I mean, what these animals do is so important. One of the species that we have, actually two species, are two types of vultures. All the roadkill that they clean up, can you imagine what the mess would be if all these dead bodies were laying around that they weren't cleaning up? So these birds do such an important job for us, and I love that I'm helping to get them back, and that you guys are as well. And this is what it's all about. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and every time I get to release a bird, it's just an amazing thing. Especially one of those fractures that we had to put all back together and watch them heal. And it's just a feeling that it's irreplaceable. I hope you guys have experienced it or will. It's just an amazing thing. I just want to end this on, I brought a couple copies of my books. I don't know if you guys have seen these, but this is a kind of a textbook of everything you need to know about rapid rehab. And this is brand new. It's a really neat